Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Yasmine Mohammed podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today, I have a guest named Xehra. Xehra is an incredibly unique woman. She's somebody who I've wanted to have on the podcast for quite a while, but things kept on getting in the way. But I'm really grateful that today we finally get to meet her, finally get to speak to her and hear her incredible story. Xehra, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
You look glorious, by the way. I know I
Thank
told you
you,
that already,
Leslie.
but
Thank you.
you you look absolutely gorgeous. So you grew up in the US from a Pakistani family,
Yes.
and I've spoken to a couple of other people that grew up in the US and Pakistani families, and they've all had sort of varied experiences of what that was like. And so I'm just going to just ask you a really open-ended question and tell me, what was your childhood like growing up as a first generation, I'd assume, first generation American to a Pakistani family?
So I feel like it was really interesting growing up as a first generation Pakistani daughter.
Mhm.
Because you end up being a product of parents who are you're kind of like a guinea pig. They're really just figuring it out as they go. They come here with this kind of like idealized mindset of what it's going to be like when they come to the West, and then want to like stay in their own bubbles when they get here and have all the benefits of being out here, but then they're shocked when their children end up being influenced by things that aren't their traditions or their religions. So I feel like my childhood was a constant battle of trying to find who I am and trying to appease my parents. I really struggled with my identity. Because obviously when you're a child, you really want your parents' approval and to make them proud however you can, and you're really easy to be indoctrinated then. So as a kid, I did not even realize just how brainwashed I was being. And then as I was getting older and as I was in environments where I was taught things that made me realize, like, wait, some of the things that I've been brought up with are kind of bigoted. Maybe I don't want to be homophobic. Maybe I have a lot of internalized misogyny. Like, I don't actually want this on my head. And why am I judging other women that are dressed differently just because I'm not because I'm told to, because I think that that's what's going to get me approval. Um, so I feel like from like the earliest age of even like second grade, there were two versions of me that were going alongside each other. And as I get older, they were going further and further apart. And it was just more and more of an internal battle.
Wow. Yeah, I relate to so much of what you said there. And that dichotomy that you described about being two different people. I don't know if you heard the podcast I had with a guest called Dr. Stephen Hassan, who does a lot of work in cult recovery. And he talked about that as like sort of your authentic self, and then your cult persona, like the person you have to be in order to survive. And that person is just has to say the right thing, has to do the right thing, has to act the right way. But inside, the spark of Xehra is there, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to suppress it, because if you let her out, then you're going to get in trouble. Like, that's bad. That's wrong. That's from the devil. That's whatever. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, it was really questioning. It was critical thinking. That was the thing that I had to suppress, because I
Mm-hmm.
was not allowed to question anything. And I'm a really curious person. And so that was really hard for me to do. Can you think back to like, what was the thing? Like, I'm just judging here, like looking at, like I was talking about, I love your personal style. like your hair, your tattoos, your, you know, your choice of career, which we're going to talk about in a minute. I feel like you are not somebody who could easily conform into being a good little Pakistani Muslim girl, right? Like you would not fit in with the rest of the little minions, you know. And so I'm feeling like you had to really diminish yourself in
Very much.
order to, yeah. So
I
tell me about that.
I feel like I had to like be a very much like a dilution of myself. I had to put so many fake facades on, and it always felt inauthentic. And the saddest part about that is that whenever I would get caught or get in trouble with my parents, it would always be a reaction of, you're so dishonest, or how could you lie to us? And the saddest thing to me is I I'm not even lying to you. I'm lying to myself. I wish I didn't even have to be lying. I wish I could be upfront and fully authentic with who I am and accepted as I am in front of you, but you are forced to be in this position where you're lying out of fear. You're brought up with fear. Every single thing from like culture and religion is all fear based. If you don't act a certain way right now, you're either going to get in trouble with your family now or in trouble with God later on. It's never based on, I'm acting this way because I want to. It's, I'm acting this way because I'm scared to.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that you had to do because it was forced upon you was wear hijab. Now, you know, at first I went to Islamic schools and then I went to public schools. And I knew some of my friends who I'd known from Islamic school. I knew that they would wear hijab when they left the home, to take it off, shove it in their backpack when they got to school, live a normal life during the day, and then put it back on their way home again. And I used to always be like, girl, you're going to get yourself killed. Like, I can't even comprehend the bravery of being able to do it. Like, I would be petrified. I would not, I couldn't do that. I was too scared to do that. But you did do that. And so, this double life that you're talking about, this authentic self and this persona, you really were living it like both
Mhm.
physically as well as emotionally. So how did your parents react when they found out?
So the hijab is a really interesting example because in my journey with hijab, you actually see like the full journey of like my mind state when I was younger and really just wanting to seek approval, and my journey of finding myself and trying to be authentic to myself. So when I first started wearing hijab, I was 12 years old, and it was actually not forced upon me at that time. At the time, I was in a time of my life where I was sort of starting to have inklings of who I was, but it was very, very suppressed. And the need to have my parents' approval was much louder. And at that time, I was finding like the more religious I acted, the happier they were with me.
Yeah, sorry if I
So,
could just interrupt
yeah,
because
yeah,
we often tell ourselves like it was our choice, but through
yeah,
listening to you now, like you probably are hearing yourself too, that you were
yeah,
coerced into it. Like it
right,
sounded like a choice, but really it's what they call a
right,
bounded choice. Yeah.
right. And that was what I was getting. I was like, as I got older, and literally it only took 1 year of me wearing it. And it was me putting that on that was like the precipice of me realizing, oh, wait, this isn't what I want. Like that was the turning point. Cause as soon as there was something that every single time I put it on and I wasn't feeling authentic to myself, or I was having all these insecurities that weren't there before. And especially like when you put it on, you realize like just how strange it is that something as innocent as hair is now seen like so
Mhm.
sexualized and forbidden, like that, like when that first happens, it is very jarring. It is very jarring when you're out and someone's like, oh, your hair is showing, and you're like tucking it away like it's like a tits pops out, like
Mhm.
it's so, like, you don't realize how much that does to you mentally, especially at such a young age. So yeah, I started taking it off at school because it just started feeling really weird, and I had like a very much like an indoor outdoor school kind of situation, so it would get hot.
Mhm.
um and you know, like, it's it seems like the most innocent thing when you're doing that too. And as far as like rebellious teenagers go, like what I was like in 10th, 11th grade in high school at this point, and like kids are up to so much at that time. I was literally the goodiest of goody two shoes, just taking off my hijab. Um, and the way that that blew up in my face when it all came out, all because there was just like one other religious girl in that school who decided to tell her mom, who decided to tell my parents, because we know how people like to mind their business. um yeah, it was very jarring because that was right when I was finding myself. At that time, I was put in a school where it really taught individuality and free thinking, and was really, I was very much starting to blossom as a person, as an artist, as an intellectual. I was very much deep in my academics. I was surrounded by people that were very passionate about academics, as well as passionate about becoming their authentic selves. That school really like cultivated students to be more like college students or adults. It was exactly the environment I needed to be in. And right when I felt like I was thriving, parents find out about hijab, and they just yoink me out of school. And I was forced to be online schooled in 11th grade. And I went from being a year ahead to having to take 2 years to finish 11th grade because I got that depressed.
Ugh.
And like I said, I hadn't done anything else besides take off hijab. So that was basically like my villain origin story, where it was like, if I'm going to be punished for, like, I've done so many wrongs
Mhm.
for
Then you
just
might as
showing
fucking
my
well.
hair,
Mhm.
just showing my hair. And we're acting like police showed up at our doorstep.
Mhm.
Where are our priorities? And then also to see like other people's parents around me looking at me like I'm a dream child. And then to have my own parents just badgering me about what a horrible, dishonest person I am. Talking about me in past tense, that's what really got me. You were the sweetest, most innocent person. You were this, you were, I'm right here. Why are you talking about me like I'm dead just because you saw my true self? Just because the version of me that's in your mold is not real doesn't mean that I'm dead in front of you right now. That shit is painful.
Oh. Oh my God, Zara, you're such a good speaker. You are really articulating so many of the feelings that I had and countless girls have had. It is incredibly depressing. I had a, yeah, I don't know if you read my book, but I had a similar experience where I was also yoinked out of school and I also fell into a deep depression. And, you know, my heart goes out to you so much because I know how bad that was, you know, and then what you're saying there about like, it's not like you became a drug dealing pregnant teen mom stripper, you know what I'm saying? Like you removed a piece of cloth off your head, and they just see you like you don't, like you are dead to them now
Right.
because of that. Like it is inconceivable now as a mother how they can do that. Like they really do put the edicts of their religion, like even the teeniest, tiniest little edicts, not just like their religion entirely, but like little, every single rule is
It
more
was
important than their love for their child.
right. It was hijab and it was social media. Like, because social media is also another place where, people go and they find themselves a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
at a young age, it was a very paranoia developing thing that when the next step after finding out um that I'm not wearing hijab anymore is just to start being very invasive with social media, and that's how they uncover who you really are and the reactions they have to that. And like you said, they're reacting like I'm some drug dealer or all, like I literally hadn't even like had a puff of anything in my life at that point, not a drop of alcohol. I cannot stress enough how much of a straight edge little nerdy kid I was that was just trying to show off her hair a little bit
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Just
and
trying to be
discovering things
comfortable, just trying to be
about,
an individual.
yeah,
Mm.
like literally things that anybody else in their upbringing would have been completely normal. And that's what's the most alienating thing about it, is you're being treated like you're a criminal for just growing up. And if you didn't want me to have a adolescent experience like this, why move here and then have a fantasy of me being kept in a bubble? I'm not that kind of person. And then comparing me to all the people that do. You should not come to a different country with different environments than what you are used to and then be surprised when you can't keep a whole human individual with thoughts, feelings, dreams stuffed inside a little cookie cutter mold. That is not how humans work. It's, oh, I feel like being a firstborn daughter of first generation immigrants means that like the first half of your life is not your own, and it's not, and in their eyes you're never even meant to be, because eventually you're just about to be someone else's wife. It's
Yeah.
never meant to be your own. And how dare I take hold of it for myself?
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I wanted to quote things that you're saying, but that's just so well articulated. So your family then at this point decide that they need to stick you back into this cage. They try to, they realize the air of having you in a free society where you're seeing like liberalism and feminism, individuality. So what do? They take you to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Tell us about how that happened.
Yeah, so 2 years after being online schooled, my dad gets a job shift and we are all moving back. We're not moving back. We're not even from Saudi Arabia. We're just moving to Saudi Arabia, which was obviously a huge culture shock. And honestly, the with like the timeline of the way things went, because I had spent 2 years like practically just like locked at home, and only going where my parents were going, and the question of school kind of being like out of the question, it was almost packaged in a way that was like, but we'll send you back to school. So
Mm.
I'm trying to like mentally feel better about this, that like at least I can be around people again. um and there were like false up in the air promises about, because this is my senior year of high school, we're going into now, that like, yeah, we can come back when it comes time for me to be in college. So obviously, like, the move was difficult. I was already kind of in a place where I felt like I was a shell of myself. Like, in the years that I was online schooled, that was the first time I fell into depression. That was like the first time that I went in, had to like find coping mechanisms that were like self-harming, and because that was the only way I felt like I could control my life again. Everything was in their control. At least I can control what I do to myself. And it was such a dark place, and it's dark when the move to Saudi almost felt like a light at the end of the tunnel at the time, even though I was not wanting to do that. It was like, at least I can be around people. But even when we moved there, so we went to, they put me in an American high school for my last year. And even then, within like my first 2 weeks there was a girl who came over to my place, and we were working on a group project. She comes out to me, and my mom was outside the door and calls me into her room, freaks out at me. And all over again, there are threats of taking me out of school, which was already just this looming, terrifying thought at the back of my head. This is something that continued to be threatened to me. And the second, like, I've come to this country and I've found someone that I can relate to. And immediately they're like, oh my God, we can't take her anywhere. We can't trust her. How dare she keep finding these deviants? And it puts such a strain on every single friendship that I made, because everything was built on paranoia, because everything was just on the edge of being threatened with being locked up again. So every time I'm trying to like make the best of any situation, it always just boils back down to me being on the edge, having to very much hide every little bit of who I am and live in a constant state of paranoia that if I'm caught, that's it, they're gonna lock me up again. So high school finishes, college is coming around the corner, and of course we hit the dead end. Of course we're not sending you back to the US. If you want to go to the US, get married, or you can study here. And I begged and begged. The college counselor was even saying, what are you doing? She has the second highest GPA in our grade, and you're not letting her pick her future. Why are you sabotaging her future? And it was all like, I was very defeated in those years. I just ended up saying, okay, fine, I'll go to college here. But everything was just like, all right, maybe if I do this, then they'll listen. Because after I did high school, they said, you can go out for college. Let me finish college, and you can go for your master's. And every time you get to the next step, there's always something else. And that's the thing about appeasing your parents, is that once you go down that route, you will never stop. You'll never be enough. Even if you force yourself into that mold to the point that you don't even have any like spice of your original flavor left, not even a semblance, they'll still be like, wait, I still see a crumb there. Get rid of it.
I have had to write that in emails to so many people. I try my hardest to get that message across, because I was one of those people who just kept appeasing, kept thinking, okay, they kept moving the goalpost, and I just kept on trying to reach that fucking carrot dangling in front of me. Like, just keep this, the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And then it's like you finally realize, oh, this is a black hole. Like, this will never end. but it's that whole, I can't remember what the term is called, but like you've wasted all these years in something. You feel like, no, but like
The sunk cost fallacy.
that's the one, the
Yeah.
sunk cost fallacy, exactly, right? And then you're stuck in this like paradox, like, but I tried so hard, I did so much, but now it was all a waste of time. It's really hard to accept that you're never going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And so I try so hard to express that to young people who are writing me letters because I don't want them to waste their time. But I know they read it and they'll answer me back and they'll be like, okay, but I'm just going to try. I'll just do this one last thing. And I'm like,
Never the last thing.
it's never, it always, it's just like the next thing, the next thing, the next thing.
And you don't even realize how much that translates into your adult life, even after you've been on your own. You don't realize like that people pleasing that becomes ingrained in you. There's so much unlearning that you have to do because you're taught that in order to be accepted, you need to be needed or wanted or appease this person. What can I do? And then you end up becoming this people pleaser without even realizing it. But it's tough. It's really, really tough when your whole life is just hammered into you that you are what I want you to be.
You don't exist. You as an individual. I mean, it's true that we're diminished and then it's true that we're reduced, but we're so tiny to begin with. Like that little authentic self is such a tiny little flame, you know? And so I know I'm jumping ahead here, but I just want, like, when you get out of it and you finally, like, you break the chains in your mind and you start going through the healing journey and you come out the other side, it is terrifying because you have no idea who you are. You have to cultivate yourself at like 26 the way other people get to do at like 12,
that part.
Yeah, like you're absolutely correct. There's no magic time when these kinds of traumas that they instill in us as a child, like they don't just go away. Like we have to constantly recognize them, like, oh gosh, okay, that's people pleasing, that's bad. Oh, okay, I have to create boundaries. Oh, okay, self-care. Like, you know what I mean? Like you're constantly unlearning all of the damage that they have basically from birth, that you have been, entirely cultivated in this soil of abuse. And as a grown, beautiful tree that you are, you now have to figure out, like, what kind of pruning needs to be done so that I can grow healthily,
Yeah, because goddamn, these weeds are growing in all directions right now.
Well, that's the thing. Like, doesn't matter how many years you do it, and then you're like, oh shit, look at that weed there that's been growing. I didn't even notice it. And then you gotta like address that. It's like, yeah, like you just, it's unfortunately, it feels like it's never ending. But I had a lot of resentment for a long time. I don't know if you did, but I had a lot of resentment for a long.
A
Oh
lot to
man.
work with.
I just feel like you don't have the right. Like at this age that I am now, like how am I how are you still invading my brain and my body, like it's so infuriating that they can do things that they don't even really even think about. Like they don't even consider it, because to them it's not, they don't even recognize how abusive it is because it's so normalized. Flippantly saying things or flippantly doing things and like talking to you as if you're in the past tense, like how painful that must have been for you and how that pain lingers for decades. They didn't think about it. They didn't realize, like, oh gosh, I shouldn't talk to my daughter that way. Like they just flippantly do stupid shit. And then we are the ones that are burdened with cleaning up the mess that they made.
Yeah. I have to very frequently watch this video by Dr. Ramani on YouTube. Does like a lot of videos on like overcoming narcissistic abuse. But one that I have to frequently rewatch is one on wishing it were different, because I find myself in that rabbit hole all the time. Because like when I, like you said, when I was finally starting to cultivate myself, I was like sprung into the world as like a 24-year-old with like the mentality of a teenager, because I
Yeah.
had been allowed to be an adult and was going through my late 20s struggling with concepts that, you know, people had well cultivated in themselves already, and constantly finding myself like, wow, like if I had had that kind of
Yeah.
upbringing, I'd be so different. Or even getting like triggered over little things like hanging out with my friends' parents and they're having like a glass of wine together, and
Yeah.
just thinking like, wow, like I had to run away because of alcohol, and here they are just casually doing that. How different would I be if this wasn't a strain in our relationship? And in that video, like I watch it because it reminds me, and she says that, like, you know, the hard truth is it wasn't different. And sure, maybe if you had all those different avenues of love and acceptance in your life, you could be different. But the fact is, like, the challenges that you had are what made you who you are right now. And the more you dive into the hypotheticals of what were, you're stopping yourself from growing into what you could be. And I really need to remind myself of that a lot when I find myself having those kind of thought processes.
Oh, I'm definitely going to have to look up that video and watch it myself, because that is also a dark place that I go to quite often. And another thing that I like to tell myself is, that ancient Japanese art of like fixing something that's broken with gold,
Mm.
kitsugi, I think it's called. I'm not really, I can't remember what it's
Yeah.
called. But I like to tell myself that like my broken parts are stronger now, like who I have. Because let's be honest, when they say you wouldn't be the person you are today, I'm like, oh, so I wouldn't have anxiety. Oh, so I wouldn't have depression.
Right.
Oh, that's great. I wouldn't have
Right.
PTSD and nightmares. Like, that's fantastic. That's the person I could have been. But it's true that you do end up with every hardship that you overcome, it makes you stronger in those areas. I'm a
Right.
lot more purposeful
Right.
in things that I like, for example, raising my daughters now. If I
Mm-hmm.
hadn't had such narcissistic parenting and such a difficult childhood, I probably would have been like every other mom out there and just like, whatever, just followed my intuition and just did, whatever. And then probably I would have made a lot of mistakes because I
Right.
wasn't purposefully, you know, um, just very focused on making sure that I do this correctly. But I was
Right.
very conscious of the fact that I have like zero, like anything that I know about parenting is incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to learn, like I need to understand and I need to figure it out and I need to do this right. So there's that. Like it pushes us into a place where, we learn and grow probably more than other people who aren't forced to
Mm-hmm.
overcome things. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. And
there's
that
that.
is also to say, like, I I do get irritated when people say like, "Oh yeah, like what you went through made you so strong." Like, I don't want to be resilient. Like, I want to
I'm
be on a
tired.
bubble bed getting fed grapes.
Yes.
I'm tired of this development. But
Yeah.
I feel like when you've already been through all that, when I find myself find myself in those rabbit holes, it's important to remind myself that I'm hurting myself by thinking about those rabbit holes. When it's already happened, I don't need someone else telling me, like, you're so strong because of what
Yeah.
you went through. But I can tell myself that, like, okay, I went through some shit,
Hmm.
and I would have been lovely if I didn't have to go through all that to be who I am right now. But what I'm trying to learn how to do, and it's a struggle, some days it's better than others, but to not live my life being jaded by it. Like, what can I do now to to take control of my life and not let the parts of me that still feel bound, like, to like not feel those like cord marks in my skin anymore even. I don't even want to look at myself and remember those things. If I like get personal about a thing, like when my one arm that was covered in scars from all that, I got it completely covered in like one of
Oh,
prettiest tattoos that
beautiful.
I have, because
Hmm.
I was so tired at looking at this arm and remembering those 2 years locked up at home. Every time I would look down, I would just be reminded that those scars will always be a part of me. So when I got that covered up, and Nick Fiero, who did this tattoo, we had a very, very emotional session going through this. And in the end of it, he was like, every time you look at your arm now, I want you to remember that everything that happened to you, you you are a product of art now. Everything that
Mm.
you went through, you have turned that into something beautiful. And that's what that is a reminder of, is like, yeah, that all sucked. That all
Ah,
still sucks.
but look at you
But
now.
I would
Yeah.
not be this fiery personality if I wasn't put through some stuff before.
Yeah. Yeah. Now let's go back to that stuff. So you're stuck in Saudi Arabia. Your
Mm-hmm.
parents aren't going to let you go to college. They say the only way you're going to get out of here is if you get married.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what the other options were, but like none of them are pretty. So what did you do?
So, all right. So after Saudi, they ended up moving to Dubai. And this is when I was um told that I'd be allowed to move for my master's. And it was just another like goalpost moving. Come here. Come here.
Mm-hmm.
When I was living in Dubai, I was able to break out into my double life a little bit more. I managed to like make my own little regimen of getting to have my cake and eat it too. And when that cake fell off its platter, um, that's when it went from a situation where I was like, all right, I'm going to slowly but surely save up some money and make my own way out when I can, to, oh my goodness, the door is being locked from the inside. And it's either get married or it's 11th grade all over again at the ripe age of 24. And so when that all happened, and that was like one of the scariest times of my life, because I
Yeah.
literally was getting flashbacks of such a dark time that I could not go back to. There was no way.
Mm-hmm.
Um so my only thoughts were, okay, I have to leave. I need to go. And I remember like trying to like scramble my way to like get my things together and everything. And my mom came into my room, kind of like sees stuff around, and she gets the idea of what I'm trying to do. And she was just like, you're not going anywhere unless you're married. And at the time, there was someone from an online Twitter community that would jokingly say, if you're ever in a bind with your parents, fake a marriage, I got you. I didn't think it would ever have to come to that. But in that moment, I'm standing there with like half a shirt in a bag, and I'm like, what if I procured a man? And um literally call up a person that they have never met. His name was Muslim sounding, and that's all that really mattered. And went from not being allowed to leave the house without permission to now that a piece of paper has been signed in Arabic, and by literally we signed a contract in a mall that who says romance is dead. Now that magical piece of paper exists, sure, be free. And
you have a new owner now.
I do. You're his problem now. And so, yeah, I got all my travel documents and all that. And within the next week was moving back to the US. And the thing is that, like, in any other family situation, a daughter reaches a certain age, she's allowed to go explore the world on her own, go off for college, go off for work. You can say anything to anybody. But the only reason why they were hung up on this marriage was because what will we tell the family? A girl is living on her own. And that mentality put me in such a dangerous situation where you were more comfortable shipping me off to a different country with a person that you don't even know. You didn't even get to vet him. I didn't even get to vet him. I didn't know what I was walking into. I would have been so much safer if I just went and decided to do that on my own. But now I'm at the mercy of a narcissistic man who thinks I owe him.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to heal from my own trauma, which I haven't even begun to unpack. And now also dealing with more things being added on.
Because he thinks he really does own you.
I would say he didn't think I owned him because or other way around. It wasn't an ownership thing. It was like an owing me thing. Because he was hip what he was doing. He was very much like an ex-Muslim and all that. And it was like a big like political gesture that he was doing. But it was all about ego. And then it was just like I just hold a lot of resentment for that mentality in itself, because it puts women in such dangerous situations. Like, someone should not have to get married, fake a marriage, or marriage should not be a ticket out the door. And you hear that so often.
Very
in
often.
girls from our background, is like marriage being a ticket out the door, which is terrifying. Because I'm lucky in the sense that, like, we were fully on board with it being a fake marriage. We never validated it when we came to the US. It was just a contract that was signed in Dubai, and like we knew what was up. Other people may not have that situation. Other people may have other legal fees that they'll have to deal with. They may actually have someone that is trying to control them and is like, you are mine now.
Yeah.
Like, I will say I was lucky in that this person, at least, you know, he taught me all the things I needed to do to be an adult, like basic things like, here's how you start a bank account. Here's how you apply for an apartment. And I got the stepping stones I needed to be off on my own and be independent. Were there other traumatic things that happened in the meantime that I then had to do a lot of healing from? Yeah. But I was still considerably lucky, because other situations like that can end up being so, so, so much darker. And the fact that this has to be a compromise that our girls have to accept is absurd. You don't hear that happening elsewhere. Why are we like pawned off like bargaining chips? Like,
Yeah.
we can never just live for ourselves. It is unheard of.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely correct. And it is really common that we would end up out of the frying pan into the fire, because if you've grown up your whole life being controlled, then how do you recognize that you're in an abusive relationship? It just feels like normal.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a huge danger. Like, and we are so much more innocent and naive than other women our same age, because we never got to live. And so it's not like we have a sense of self. And when somebody is like invading your boundaries, or you know what I mean, or acting in a manner that is disrespectful, it's not like there's a red flag that you're going to see, because you don't even have a sense of self. So you wouldn't even know that this person has just invaded, you know what I mean, like that they've just crossed a boundary. Like, you're like, what boundary? I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know I had the right to any boundaries. And so yes, you're absolutely correct, that happens so often. It happened with me. But I've spoken to so many girls who that's happened to. Another person who I had on this podcast is a woman named Rada from Saudi Arabia. And it's the same kind of thing. Like, she chose a guy who was like open-minded, liberal, you know, in the Saudi Arabian sense. Like, it's all relative, right? So compared to the other men out there, he was pretty decent, but
Mm-hmm.
and therefore it takes a lot longer before you start to realize, like, oh my God, this is not healthy for me.
Right.
Yeah.
And another thing that I've found, and I still sometimes struggle with, is like with that sense of identity, when you first are off on your own, there are so many things that you are trying to figure out, where you're just like, is this actually my personality? Or
Yeah.
is this just a product of me being rebellious, or a product of trauma? Do I
Or
even
a
have a
coping
personality?
mechanism. Yeah.
Yes, one of the three. And it's like, do I have a personality, or am I just picking from this little buffet of like, are you a coping mechanism, or am I just rebelling right now? Sometimes you find yourself like, you're I feel like I between 24 and 26, I did a speed run of a normal person's like 12-year-old to 22-year-old lifespan. And I went through all of those phases real fast in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that does a lot of brain damage.
I totally and completely hear that. Yeah. And you have to skip a lot of parts too to get there
Yeah.
quickly. Yeah. Like, I was a
Yeah.
mom suddenly. So like, I didn't have the time. Like, I had to go from like being a teenager to being a mom.
Yeah.
Like, that's a
Yeah.
huge gap of time there that just I didn't get to grow. I didn't get to become.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally hear you. So you get away from him,
Mm-hmm.
and you start now finding who is the authentic Xehra, and you know, basically disposing of this persona bit by bit that you've had to create to keep yourself safe. And you've allowed yourself now to emerge like a phoenix out of the fire, which is so apt because you are now a fire performer. And you say, I love this quote, you say, you dance with the fire you were once told to fear. Everybody loves that quote as much as I do every time, right? I get all these messages going, oh my God, I love her. I'm like, I know. So tell me how that happened. How did you end up in this, becoming a fire performer?
Yeah, so honestly, I have the pandemic to thank for that. Like in all of my like self-discovery that I'm going through these years and everything, the world shuts down. And I had to take a pause from all the things that were going on in my life. And it was at a time that I was really doing that questioning of like, am I am I around these people and acting this way because I want to or because I'm just rebelling? I feel like I want to do more. And when the world shut down, I had one friend who was just like a hula hoop dancer at the time. So I just asked, hey, can I borrow a hoop? Because I just need something to do with my hands or I'm going to go crazy. And I just start practicing hula hoop at home. And then through the pandemic, me what like when you start getting involved in any kind of dance community, you end up finding other people that are doing the same things. So when I met up with other, they call them flow artists, um, what you see that the next step above just playing with a hoop is you set it on fire.
Mm,
And let me tell you,
naturally.
I was I was always like extra terrified of fire because everything is just like fear the not your whole life.
Hmm.
And like
Hmm.
to the point that I was literally scared to use lighters, like lighting a candle. I had to have someone else do that for me because I was like, what if I hurt my thumb? Um,
Hmm.
so when people would say like, oh, you should just try to do it on fire, I was like, no, you don't understand. I'm scared of fire. Um, And I'll never forget the day that this one girl was just like, we really need to like conquer this fear of fire for you. And I was like, no, I'm actually very comfortable here.
I like
I
my fear.
I like my
Leave it
fear. I
alone.
play with lights and plastic. I'm fine. And then there was just one day that we were all practicing and she was just like, hey, can you hold this? And just thunk, puts a head torch lit in my hand. And I literally stood there with it, staring at it in pure fear, just petrified for like until it went off for 5 minutes. Just like,
Oh my God.
and then when it went out, she just looks at me like, "But did you die though?" And she's like, "Now try moving with it next time." And so my friends were very encouraging. One of my friends, like, they start training me with the certain movements that you do. And they're like, look, if you get the muscle memory to do this off fire, once it's on fire, if you just do what your muscles already know how to do, you're not going to burn yourself.
Don't
Fire is
overthink
not
it.
something to be scared of, it's something you need to respect and be aware of.
Mhm.
And eventually, I I lit up one of my props. I had a very nervous little 10 feet away from me burn, but also, yeah, I was like hearing the whoosh of the flames, feeling the heat of her, and realizing, like, yeah, this was used to control me. And here it is in my hand, and I'm controlling where it's going. I don't need to be living in fear. The whole moral of my life is look at what living in fear does to you. Conquer that fear and turn it into something beautiful. So the empowerment that I got from having fire be something that controlled me to fire becoming an extension of me, to becoming a
Mm.
lover for me, to becoming a dance partner. It it just blossomed me into my ultimate form as a person, to finally let go of like the element, the very
Yeah.
thing that they
Mhm.
have been controlling me my whole life.
Mm.
And now I'm on stage with it. Now every time it's lit, like I feel a flame in me that goes off every time there's fire in front of me, and it makes me feel alive. And it's a reminder every single time of how far I've come. Like every bit of ink I have in my skin is a reminder of my body autonomy, and fire is yet another reminder of that, of just it's just everything. Just look at how far you've come, and look at how much you can do when you let go. And I really, I a lot of the times when I perform, there are girls who look like me who come up to me, and they're just sometimes we'll just like not even like say anything for a minute. We'll just look into each other's eyes, and she'll just like hold my hand, and like in just a silent conversation, we're saying to like, I know you've been through a lot to be here right now, and like in whatever festival or wherever we are. I know, like we see that story, and then they're just like, when I see you up there, you inspire me so much. And that's mainly what I want to do with my story. Cause like I spent most of my life thinking like, okay, if I'm not free until I'm 25, then I'm just gonna like 25 was my cutoff year. I was like, I don't want to keep living if my life is gonna be in control of somebody else. And there I was at 24, completely different trajectory from where it seemed completely impossible. It did not seem like there was ever going to be an end to that goalpost getting further and further for me. And I just, whenever like people like DM me and ask me like, I don't think there's ever going to be an end. What should I do? And my answer is, oh, if I was able to do it, so will you. Do not lose hope. I always want to be able to inspire people to be their authentic selves, to like let go of that shame that we were taught. We have such an incredible power in our bodies. Our bodies can do so much. We can create so much art. Our bodies are objects of pleasure. Our bodies are entities of the divine feminine, and we have been told that it is the most shameful thing that you need to cover up and you need to stow away. You don't laugh too loud. Your voice is out. Every little bit of what makes me me has been kept in a box and told it's unacceptable. And to take that box out and to just throw all the contents and get to celebrate them and just embody myself in every bit of me and live in that full authenticity, it is such a dream come true.
I wish
And
that for every girl.
every girl, and I want to say to every girl, do not lose hope, because it is possible, and it is possible to cultivate your own inner fire and let go and burn all of that shame that we have been told to keep inside of us, and just embrace who you are shamelessly with full authenticity and full self-love, because we deserve that.
Yes.
It's so damaging the amount of self-hate that gets ingrained in us,
Yeah.
the amount of self-punishment we do for the unnecessary advances of the male gaze, because that's taught that that's a burden that we have to carry. It is all on us. All of that, the digressions of men and all the rules on men, all that weight just comes down on us. And then we're expected not to crack.
You know, as you were talking, you're reminding me, you know, Raif Badawi, well, you would know because he's from Saudi Arabia. His wife, Ansaf Haidar, I met her a couple of years ago. And she was saying to me that now, as the mother of three, like totally grown up, she's finally recognized that she's powerful. She's like, and what I recognized was they always knew it. I didn't know, but they all knew. And from your childhood, their goal is to prevent you from ever knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
They never want you to know what you know now, right?
Mm-hmm.
They never want you to feel confident and divine. They want you to feel small and diminished because that way you can be controlled. And it's so, I mean, she made me cry when she said that because this woman has been through hell and back, right? Like, you know, her story. And she's so tiny too. Like, she's so small and so mighty. She's like
Mm-hmm.
amazing. But that's really the story of all of us.
Yep.
Like, it's like this revelation, like this, whoa, I can do it. I am capable. You know, like it's such a surprise to us because what you talked about, that self-hate, like that was instilled in us. Like, we were told that we were small. We were told that we were incapable, and so we believed it. And then one day, this is why I wish this for every girl, when you recognized that it was like, look at what I'm doing. I am dancing with the fire that I have been told to fear. It is now my dance partner. Like, we are up here gloriously in each other's light, you know? And it's like, you realize the whole thing was a lie.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was a lie. And you are so much more than they ever led you to believe. And it's for me, it was like a lot of little experiences. Like, I love that yours was so powerful and so visual when you describe it too. But as you were talking, I was thinking, like, what is my parallel to that? And to me, it was, remember I told you I was really curious. I was always thinking, I was always questioning, and that was always a bad thing. You know how it is. It's waswasa min ash-shaytan, right? You can't think. Thinking is bad, you know, you can't
Right.
question. And so, but I never imagined I would ever go to college. Like, there's no way. Because of course you finish, you know, high school, you get married, you make babies, like, what else? That's your purpose. And so when I was not only able to go to college, and now I teach in college, it was like, that was like my moment where I felt like they tried to tell me that I couldn't do this. Well, not only am I fucking doing it, I'm doing it for others.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's glorious. And I am so excited about all of the letters that I'm going to be getting, about girls that are going to be watching this and that are going to be inspired by you, and that are going to be feeling like, you know, what will be my story? Can I do that too? You know, what will be my, you know, parallel to Zara's Dancing with the Fire story? And if you're watching this video now, tell us in the comments below, send me a note. I'm going to forward it on to Zara. Tell me what your parallel is, or what you want your parallel to be. Tell me how her story is inspiring you, because I just know that this is going to be like, you know, like you've just lit a match, you've lit a spark. And this is just, I just know that you're going to be, so many hearts are feeling really inspired right now. I'm
That's all.
so proud of you.
I'm so honored to be speaking with you. You were back in my days in Saudi Arabia, I was just a silent little Twitter follower of you, and you were one of my like, when will be my story? And
Oh,
I it's just the fact that I'm talking to you and letting my story out right now is I'm having like an out of body surreal moment with myself right now.
beautiful. Full circle moment. Glorious. I love it. I'm going to open it up to everybody now. We've got a few comments, but anybody who wants anything, who wants to share anything with Zara or ask her any questions, please just go ahead and unmute yourself. Lois. Oh, we lost Lois, but I'm going to read you the comment that she had. She said, once after I'd gone through a miserable, dangerous period, a friend said, aren't you glad you're so strong? And I thought about it and I said, yeah, I'm glad, but I hope I never have to use that strength again. We know that feeling.
Oh, yeah, felt
She
that.
also says, Zara, you are amazing. Thank you so very much for sharing your journey with us. You express yourself so vividly. You do. You need to write a book. Like you are such a good speaker. I know you're such a good writer too. Yeah, you definitely have to write a book. You are
Thank
helping you are helping so many people believe that they can build their own life. I wish I could stay, but I have another online event that I need to attend. Okay, that's why she had to go. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Um, Christy says, amazing, empowering words. Thank you. And Ira says, thanks. It's a great moral tonic, better than even the best church sermon. I'll tell you, it's better than a khutbah. I can promise you that.
For sure.
Alvaro, here he is. It says, I'm very glad to be in this podcast. I'll be in the next ones too. That's great. Thank you. It was great listening to you, Zara. That was from Adalia. Oh, and Alvaro says he can't unmute because he's in the metro, but he has a question. Did you meet other Pakistani girls who had a similar experience to yours?
Yes. I feel like not everybody has had the same exact like copy paste of what I went through in what happened in the aftermath, but I feel like in terms of like the upbringing, I feel like that's a common denominator with so many people. And that was what was really shocking to me at first was when I grew up, I thought it was just me.
Yeah.
And I feel like my move to the Middle East was really that was the first time that I realized I'm not alone. Like online on Twitter and everything, you find a community of people that are just like you. I would not have even been able to do the whole fake marriage thing if Twitter hadn't even started a GoFundMe for me at that time. Like, honestly, I have the internet to thank so much for all that. I actually want to take a moment to thank all the people back 7 years ago who donated when I really was in a dire situation. Like seriously, from the bottom of my heart, I cannot thank you enough. That was the scariest time of my life. And every little bit of you that helped, like, I just want you to know that you changed my life forever.
Oh, that's so lovely. You know, when you were talking, I was thinking of a friend of mine named Alishba, who also is Pakistani, and she now does boudoir photos because of what you were talking about, like our being ashamed of our bodies and not embracing our bodies and feeling like it's something bad and dirty. Like you were talking about, like even a hair coming out, it was like, put it away, like you're, like you said, like a tit just popped out, like it's a strand of hair. Can we all just relax? But that makes you always feel like your body is something that needs to be hidden away, and it's dirty and it's shameful and it's bad and it causes fitna. You wear jeans, you're going to cause earthquakes,
You're just a source of temptation.
Yes. But the other side of that is like, well, our bodies are pretty powerful then. If
Exactly.
you need to try so hard to keep this powerful thing hidden away. But of course, they tell us that its power is like in a negative way. It causes chaos, causes men to sin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I love that she does these boudoir photos. And I like, there's so many ex-Muslim women that used to be hijabis, right? And then we have to go through that whole process of like learning to love yourself, both, physically and, psychologically. And it's so beautiful. Like, it's like a really intense therapy session,
It
when you
really.
come out the other side and you're like, I look beautiful in these photos. Like, that's me. I didn't do them, but people who have told me that they've gone through. She's in Toronto, so one day I'll do it, but she's far away. But it's like so empowering.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that there's so many of us that have been through such darkness, and that
Mm-hmm.
we're able to, like, come on, like, we are just phenomenal, miraculous human beings. Like, it needs to be
Right.
said. It needs
Right.
to be said. Like,
Like,
we
words exist to shame women. You have raib, you have haya, aura, sharam. Like, how many words exist for shame?
yeah.
And like, if your honor is so strong, why is it so fragile that just like a woman being empowered by her body shatters it?
Mm-hmm.
First of all, who decided to put your family honor in my body in the first place? That's not my
Yes. I
birthday.
did not consent to that. Yeah. Yeah. Love
Mm.
it.
Hi.
Okay,
Hi.
sure.
Hi.
Go ahead, Ira.
Yeah. Uh, I've had cats with multicolored hair, and no one ever told them to be ashamed of the colors of their hair or ashamed of the beauty and affection of their body. Uh, it's only to humans that we do the great honor of making us ashamed of the goodness of our bodies.
Yeah, true.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
it is a strange thing. Yeah, way back thousands of years ago, they had passions that they had to find a way to regulate, and we still do have to, but that doesn't. But we screwed it up pretty badly sometimes too.
Yeah.
And we let
Yeah.
our cats enjoy their passions. We never ashamed of that.
Very true.
We should learn from that.
Absolutely. I've got one more question here for you too. It says, I relate with your story so much. What's your relationship with your parents now? Does it get better? I think my parents are not bad people, but their love is unfortunately conditional. We know all about that, Zara.
Very much feel that. And I think that's the hardest part about this whole journey is that it's not black and white. Um, our parents are not horrible people. They did want, or I can speak for my parents, I know they want the best for me. And I know they raised me with a lot of love too. And the hard parts are um when you're dealing with the dichotomy of like, I love them for who they are, but they don't love me for who I am. So in terms of it getting better, there are ways to continue relationships with people with boundaries, very, very strict boundaries set. There will never be a time where I feel like they will ever fully see me. And that is something that you have to accept when you choose to continue relationships with conditional love. I have found that the most healing thing for me is finding a chosen family with people around me who see me for who I am and accept me as I am. And it really taught me, like, there was never anything missing in me this whole time. It can become difficult to continue relationships with conditional love because you can often find yourself under the premise of false hopes that things are getting better. And then, as we were talking about that goalpost moving, like when that starts happening again, you're faced with that disappointment. So when you do keep these relationships, you really need to keep in mind, like, this is the relationship that you are signing up for. Don't set yourself up for false hopes and then be disappointed by it. So the answer to that is yes, asterisks. With some footnotes. Yes, but I separately, I'm doing my own thing. They've kind of just accepted that, like, this is the life that I'm going to live, and we draw our middle lines where we can.
That's actually really beautiful, though, that they can at least do that, because we know how difficult it is for them to do that.
Oh, it took years speaking. I will say
Yeah.
it took years of not speaking, and honestly, bless my grandmother, because she's the reason why any bridges were even, like, mended. I feel like our grandparents' generation is kind of like skipped when we speak a lot, because they, especially with first generation immigrants, they weren't my grandparents' generation wasn't as religious.
Yeah.
So when they see the way things have transpired, my grandmother's like, look, I don't know what's going on between you and your mom, but it's different than me. Like, I'm home right now. See me. So yeah, it's a very strained relationship. I definitely feel like when I start getting caught up in like, whenever I get really hopeful for that relationship, I sometimes get caught up in trying to, like, wish that they could fully see me, and that can end up being very painful. So yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're going through a lot of healing, but they're not. They're not healing themselves. So we have to accept them where they are if we want
and
them in our life.
You can remember the happy memories and accept the good parts of it without the same way, like in a abusive, like, romantic relationship, without romanticizing what those moments were and blowing them out of proportion. You can appreciate the moments where you were brought up with love and the happy times that you had together, and also accept that, you know what, this is kind of what the reality is. And at the end of the day, if I'm not fully being seen, faking myself now is exhausting for me. I only saw that.
Yeah, beautiful, sage, wise advice. And you've got, so that was from Hansa, and now you've got another question here. It says, I read Yasmine's book and I can see so many things that are almost exactly as her experience. This demonstrates how so many people live these negative upbringings. There is an Islamist YouTuber called Daniel. Oh, for fuck's sake, this guy. I can't escape him. I don't even know how you pronounce his last name. Daniel Hakikatuju. You know him. He's the one that goes around talking about marrying children is okay. He argues that religion, especially Islam, makes societies and people better. Your story and Yasmine's story are two examples of how this is so untrue. Yeah, it's definitely untrue. So you got my story, you got Zara's story, and then, like, look at any one of the 50 Muslim majority countries on the planet. Exhibit A, B, C, D. Finish the alphabet. Start again at A. Like, yeah, there's a lot of examples of how Islam does not make societies better.
once women are able to start speaking out, what that society has done great is suppressing our voices, like literally like telling us our voices are out up. What is
Yes.
up with that?
The word aura, you guys, it means like nakedness, shame, like aura, like your vagina, your breasts, those are aura, and also your hair.
And they say that about voices and loud
And
laughter.
yeah.
Like, think about that, to parallel that with your vagina. And that's how much you need to keep that hidden.
Keep your mouth shut. Yeah. Keep your voice
So,
hidden.
of course, once we start using those vocal cords, we're going to be roaring.
Yes. And I see that already. I see it already with the hashtags that like the free from hijab or the no hijab day. Like I have to tell you, the first year I did that and I got videos from women in Saudi Arabia burning their niqabs, like I was shocked. I did not know. I was like, because I lived in Qatar and I was like amazed that these women could be so courageous, you know? And of course, we can see the Iranian women now, like
Yeah,
after Masa Amini, yeah, how they have just been like
we're getting over it.
superhuman.
Everyone's getting over it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have that little like seed in you that starts growing that's just like, this is not me.
I'm done.
I'm not being myself. Like, it's literally like you feel like you're a caged bird. And like no one can even, like, even if you're chirping inside of a cage, no one's about to open that door for you. So once you're able to start seeing solidarity in other people doing it, like in Pakistan, like the Aurat March that they're starting to do,
Yes.
I've
Mm-hmm.
that's something that's relatively new. Like, you don't hear about like women taking to the streets and having like signs that say like "Meri jism meri marzi," which translates to "my body, my choice," which is huge if you think
Mm-hmm.
about the things that we are taught in our society. Our bodies are never our choice. I was literally taught my body doesn't belong to me, it belongs to Allah. So even me getting tattoos isn't allowed because this isn't my skin. I'm on a rental. This is a lease.
Mm. And that translates to when you get married as well, you don't have the right to say no to your husband because he owns you now. You are his property. And so he will, sow you with his seed as he
Mm-hmm.
pleases.
And isn't it crazy?
Um,
Like, sexuality is used to control, like, consensual sex is literally considered the worst thing a woman could ever do for herself. And then the parallel is just like sign a piece of paper, and now this man suddenly has all the rights to that same thing that you would have literally been shot for.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Because
that's a
like you
whole nother
said,
can of worms.
yeah, because you don't own your own body. Um,
It's infuriating.
I feel like we all get to this point because you talked about how you lived in such fear, and so did I. But I feel like we all get to this point where, like, at some point, the rage overpowers the fear.
When they
Like,
took me out of school, that was it.
yeah, there's like a formula, whatever it
Mhm.
is. We all have our own origin story, like you said.
Right.
And there's like, that's the moment. Like, you're
When
so
that,
filled with fear. Like, the cortisol is just like overflowing. But then something happens and the rage just makes you like, it's like this quiet, like you don't even feel fear anymore. Like, I don't have room for fear because I'm too filled with rage.
right. Because it's at that point, like when that happened to me, it was like, okay, what else are they going to do to me now? Like, they've already
Yes.
taken like friendships and autonomy away from me. And what do I have to lose except to just be who I am now? Why am I pretending?
Yeah.
Why am I pretending?
Yeah.
See how far it got me. I'm a liar because I tried to pretend. I was just trying to still be loved by you.
Mhm.
And this was the conditions in which I was able to do that.
You were trying to make them happy
Mm-hmm.
and you get punished for it. I've got another question for you here. It says, I used to ask my mom why women couldn't give the call to prayer. And she said it was because men will find women's voices attractive and it will tempt them. These fragile little things, you know, some
would always,
hair, a
the one that blew me
voice.
most, the one where they said that the prophet said that if a man smells another woman's perfume, she's considered an adulteress.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
Whose
She's the whore
perfume
now.
has questioning your marriage, my friend? What?
I
I can't
there's
see
a
that in public. Get out of here.
there's I don't know if you remember Lonely Planet. It was like, or not Lonely Planet, Lonely, oh, what the fuck were they called? Not Lonely Planet. Lonely Island. Lonely Island. They used to make these videos back in the day. And there's one where they made it's, it's called I Jizzed on Myself. And it is like, that's Muslim men, right? Like, and then a strong wind came and I jizzed on myself, right? It's like, and then I saw her ankles,
Oh, like
right?
that little. Are you talking about that one song that they had? I know what you're talking. Literally. Oh my god. Oh, that. Oh,
And
that
I
brought
heard her voice,
back
right?
memory.
Like, come
Seriously though.
on.
Then he's like, and I ate a grape, and yeah,
Yeah.
literally. It's like I never felt more sexualized than I did when I lived in Saudi because I was a rebel in that I used to like unbutton my abaya. I was like, you're not taking all of my individuality away. I will still wear all covered clothes. Like no skin was showing, but it was like a jeans and a t-shirt with an open abaya on top. And the way I would be stared at by men, like glued, like they'd never ever seen a woman in their life. It was so uncomfortable.
But
And
that's,
the calling, the hollering, all because I'm not even showing skin. It really like damages even like the way men in that part of the world think and view women because they become so entitled to every bit of what we show for ourselves.
yeah,
They
just for
all
comfort.
collectively think they own us.
Yeah. Yeah. You're absolutely correct. We talk about how toxic it is and insidious it is for girls, this whole modesty culture. But it is toxic and insidious for boys as well, right? Like they are not being raised as functioning human beings when they're being told all of these viciously vile, misogynist things. They don't even see us as human beings. They don't. And I got to be honest with you, even after they become ex-Muslim sometimes, like they get rid of all of the, all of the nonsense about the religion, but the misogyny is like one of the last things to go. Yeah, it's so deeply ingrained in there. Like it's like a surprise to them that we are like full human beings that don't exist for their pleasure or their enjoyment or for their service. Like it's like, what? It's such an old, it's biblical too, right? Like Eve was created from Adam's rib. Like she is like a piece of him that was like created for him to now like make babies with or whatever. And they see us that way. They see us as an extension of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so damaging for them because they have to, eventually, if they ever want to be, full-fledged human beings, they have to recognize how dangerous, how wrong, how vile all of that training that was put into their heads, like all of that thinking, the way they view women as just like a sex thing, a gift to be given to jihadis in heaven, right? Here, take 72 of them.
Right.
These
Like, what kind
things.
of number is that?
Even know, right? Like, it's just, that's another thing that we can talk about. Like, we could have like a whole episode on that.
Literally.
But yeah. Anyway, I am really, 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 really grateful that you have come and shared your story with me here today. I know that every single person who reads this is going to be, or who watches this is going to be so inspired by you. I made a little slip there and said, read, because I'm already imagining and hoping that you're going to write your book. And when you do, I want you to come back on. If I've still got this podcast going, hopefully I do. And I want to help you get your book as far and wide as possible, because it's so inspiring. And I feel like that's what we need to do. You know, it's like your tattoo. You take the darkest part of your life and you make something good out of it. You make something beautiful out of it. And that's what your story can do. You can take this darkness and do something so good by encouraging and inspiring others. Through reading your story, they'll see themselves, they'll relate to it, because they will relate to it, unfortunately, right? So many parts of your story and my story are like way too common. And it's like a ripple effect, you know? We're gonna just spread the joy, spread the love, spread the truth. You know, let these women know who they are and what they're capable of. Let them know that it's all a lie. I think that it's through social media, we can already see the potential of this thing blowing wide open. You know, it's like you talked about your grandma's generation. It wasn't like this, not for my grandma's generation either, because this all happened with the Islamization. It was like, you know, the Islamic regime in Iran started it. And then it was just like this Muslim Brotherhood, like all of them. Yeah, exactly. Like they had that whole ripple effect. But it's like, you can see now that we reached like the peak and things are starting to come down. And like social media plays a big part in that. And so that's why I hope that through doing these podcasts, I'm able to get our voices out there and let women out there in the world hear our stories and know that like I can do that too. Like I'm also, I want that. I want what Xehra has.
Thank you so much for doing this platform too, because like this was something that I would have needed 10 years ago. You know, like I wish I had more stories to hear that were like success stories. So it seems less bleak when you're deep in it. And it just seems impossible, because I think you and I can both speak and say at one point in our lives, we are like, this is it. This is what it is. It is what it is. Freedom is impossible.
Yeah.
And it is so monumentally huge to be able to be somewhere and say that it's not. So if anyone is sitting there and those same impossible words are ringing in their heads. I remember there was a song by Muse that I used to like rage listen to at home. And it was a song about breaking free from your oppressors. It was called The Handler. And I used to like blast it in my ears. And the last line of the song was, "You will never own me again." And I used to just be in my room like, when will I relate to that? This is never going to be me. And now I listen to the same song. And actually, like the first tattoo that I got, I designed it myself. And it is a picture of a hand holding a heart on a puppet strings and scissors cutting off the puppet strings. And that was the first tattoo that I got on myself. It's the only one that I designed myself.
That sounds beautiful. I want you to send me a photo of that.
I will.
Oh, I love that. That is
So
gorgeous.
everyone will be from their handlers. You too will get those puppet strings cut. Nobody's heart should be on someone else's strings.
I have to end on that note because that was just so beautiful and just so perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you for
and
it's been an honor.
So grateful, and I can't wait to read your book.
For sure. You've given me the inspiration to do that. I needed the push.
Yes, you are so well spoken. You're so articulate. You have done so much work in like you've in understanding everything, and it really helps to clarify things, you know, and so I think it's going to be so healing for so many people. You've got all these thank yous in the chat. Yeah.
They're all
and
welcome. My DMs are also open if anyone has any other questions that they want to ask. Can't say that I'll have all the answers, but I'm always here to show support.
Thank you, lovely. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining. And we'll see you all next time. Take care, Zara. Bye.
Thank you so much for having
everyone.
me.
Thank you, lovely.